Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Knockout Podcast, episode 63. We come back after the biggest pay-per-view of the year, UFC 264, the trilogy, Poirier versus McGregor. And if you'd told me at the start of the night, McGregor would be doing gunshots and threatening to kill an innocent wife and child, I'd have probably not been too surprised, in all honesty. But that was the situation we found ourselves in. We'll dive all into that and more. I'm here with Jack. Jack, how are you doing on this pretty sunny summer evening?
Doing pretty good. As you said, it was an interesting one. A bit of a strange ending to the night. But yeah, doing pretty good.
Good stuff. Well, I mean, it was the end of that night, but it feels like the first thing to jump into. I mean, it is the main talking point. Dustin Poirier defeats Conor McGregor, TKO stoppage, leg injury. I mean, it's the second one in probably a couple of months after Chris Weidman sort of broke his leg. Albeit in slightly different circumstances, but
this one was a lot less horrific.
Yes, so. Certainly was. But I mean, we may as well jump in straight away. I mean, I guess I'll just come to you for your sort of general thoughts of the fight overall, and then we'll sort of dig into it a bit deeper.
I mean, it was a nice and tidy. It's literally exactly one round to talk about, so that's interesting. But no, I think that Conor comes out straight away. We said, like, in our preview, the way that Conor McGregor is, when he can't, he really keys in on something, but like generally only one thing in particular. And we said that for Conor and for the media generally surrounding the second fight was the low kicks. And we saw straight away he'd keyed in on that. And we said that he'd have one adaptation for it. We weren't quite sure what it was necessarily, but straight away we saw it was low kicks of his own, basically. So he comes out absolutely blasting low kicks at Poirier. And what you can see is, I think that McGregor is a decent kicker in some ways, but he's not a particularly good low kicker. And although they were fairly hard, you can see that very consistently they were landing with the foot more than they were with the shin. So like the placement of them wasn't necessarily the best. And that's like, you could see that in when he fought Diaz in the second fight. He was kicking Diaz's legs, obviously, because that was the adaptation he keyed in for that fight as well. And Nate, we know, isn't a prolific checker of kicks, like very famously. But still, after that fight, McGregor was on crutches after, because he was kicking Diaz's legs all night, generally landing with the foot again. So he had to get on crutches out of there. So that's the early stage of the fight, and I feel that that's probably something that led to the strange ending that we had. But then after that, it was essentially Dustin kind of found his reads and turned it on very quickly compared to the first fight. I think that he basically just kind of had Conor's number essentially after that, and he was slipping his punches, countering him, and being able to press forward, hurt Conor fairly badly, or not hurt Conor, caused Conor to clinch up, took him down, and absolutely pasted him on the ground. And that was essentially the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think you keyed in something quite important there, which was the composure from Poirier. I think we've seen, I think with McGregor, as you say, in that first fight, and then also maybe with the Alvarez fight, that he can have this ability to just sort of like spook an opponent out and just sort of like completely throw them off their game. I think we saw from that second win, I think from the confidence gained from that second win, he went in there and he was able to sort of ride that storm. I think he knew that McGregor was going to come out there very fast and look to sort of, get his sort of revenge back after that second one. But
yeah,
as you said,
I think that's interesting. I think like after the second fight, you could see it kind of with Poirier in the build up to this fight, and with especially in like the press conference, like for Poirier, like the aura surrounding Conor McGregor was completely gone. Like there was no fear in him at all. Like he did not. He was so confident, and he knew he was going to win. So like just that aura surrounding Conor that he would have had going into the first fight just completely wasn't there, and he fought like it. Yeah, sorry, carry on. Just
I think that's definitely right, and that aura, I think it's probably going to be gone for a lot of fighters after this fight, because, as you say, took him to the ground, and from there it was dominant. You know, there was a sort of very, very sort of half-assed attempt at a guillotine, which was surprising in and of itself. You know, that he was, you know, saying, "Oh God, the first person to reach for the takedown," and he reaches for the takedown and then reaches for the guillotine. And what we've seen there, that, you know, for a guy that has fought Khabib, there really is still no ability for McGregor to sort of be defensively sound from the bottom. And Poirier, who is a well-rounded fighter, and I think we've seen that as the fight's gone on. But, you know, it was just picking him apart with each. You know, two of the judges gave him a 10-8, and that was even after he basically didn't do anything for the first minute, because he was just soaking up Conor's early pressure. So, yeah, I mean, elbows, the ground and pound, it was all there. And then, yeah, the fight ends in slightly weird and, I guess, maybe unfortunate circumstances, with McGregor stepping back and that obviously happening with his leg. I think, as you say, whether it was his sort of bad technique, low kicks, or there was some theory about an elbow as McGregor threw a teep kick. There's been all sorts of things bandied around. I think regardless of, you know, the leg break, something was clearly done to you know, force that break. You're not just going to step back and break your leg. Like, you know, this wasn't a sort of really unfortunate Weidman one where, okay, it's a good check, but it's like, you know, that, you know, how often is that going to happen? Not often. Clearly there was stuff done to force the break, but also I think I'd seen enough in the 5 minutes to know that this fight was probably going in the direction that we saw it was going, in terms of I think after that first round, you know, even if McGregor had managed to, you know, not break his leg and gone back to the stall and come out for that second round, I don't think the result was going any other way than a sort of Poirier stoppage or Poirier's unanimous decision victory.
Like we talk, like Conor McGregor, like in our kind of build-up, we said that Conor has essentially, these days especially, he's got about 7 minutes in him where he's dangerous and able to do things. And he'd spent 4 of those 7 minutes, so 4 minutes of the first round, getting absolutely battered. So like there was essentially no coming back from that for Conor. It was just going to essentially be more violent, like no matter what. Though, like, I don't see a way that Conor McGregor wins that fight from there, honestly. Like the type of fighter he is, just kind of the type of fight he was fighting, and then like how it went for him, there isn't really a way that he gets back into that. I don't think. He's like generally sort of a front runner anyway. Like, how many fights can you think of where Conor McGregor's made like a big comeback? Like, he's generally a fighter that wants to go out there and like one of his like main strengths is that he is on from the get go. Like from second number 1, he is sharp. So when he doesn't have a good first round, he's in trouble. And yeah, that fight wasn't going any other way other than Dustin knocking him out again, basically.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I think you mentioned that he's not a great front runner. Oh, so he is the front. He is a good front runner. He is a front runner. Yeah, when working up against adversity, I've not seen him do anything really. I think one thing that really stood out for me was just the lack of composure from him. You know, I think back to his Eddie Alvarez fight, which is, well, his only win at 155, and probably one of his best performances, I think. And I think
it's probably one of the best performances ever. Honestly, that was a ridiculously impressive performance.
I just think about how calm he was, you know, and it was, you know, he's always a guy that, you know, there are some counter punchers that sort of, you know, will literally just counter punch. They will wait for the punch and then they'll come. But I think McGregor at his prime was so good at drawing out, you know, throwing to draw out and then and then just coming over the top. I think, as I said, that Eddie Alvarez fight is the example of that. Just piecing Alvarez together, and there was just no point, even in that first round, that I thought I feel like there was no traps being set. I just felt like he just went out there and just thought, I am gonna throw everything I can at these leg kicks, and he was still going for that sort of lead uppercut move that I think Poirier, saw coming a mile off. There was just such a lack of finesse, composure, and it just felt like an angry McGregor in there, which is so he was so good at having all that anger and animosity in the press conference, but then being that sort of cool customer in the octagon. And in that octagon on sort of Sunday morning, there was no one cooler than Dustin Poirier. McGregor was, in that first few minutes, everything was flying everywhere. The Conor McGregor of old would never have thrown or never have jumped on a guillotine.
Yeah, not like that anyway. But yeah, no, it is interesting, like in the way that they've developed. I thought I could say it fairly confidently after the second fight, but I can say with absolute confidence now, like Dustin Poirier is just a far superior fighter in essentially every way. Like he's just the better fighter, and there's no doubt about that, I'd say. Like you see, like when they're exchanging, like Poirier's like building, he's using his jab to set things up. Like quite a few times in the fight, they both throw like simultaneous left hands, and just like compare them, like a shot by shot, like still image comparison. You can see Poirier is just in that generally better. Like he's throwing, like he's taking his head off the center line as he throws, like whereas McGregor's like kind of bolt upright, overextending himself, stuff like that. So I think the combination that Poirier hurt McGregor with just before like McGregor kind of ducked in for the half takedown, half clinch thing, started, they both threw left hands. Poirier, as he threw his, slipped his head off the center line, cracked McGregor missed, and then Poirier followed up with a right hook. Like just simple stuff like that, like taking your head off the center line and combination punching that just McGregor doesn't really do. And Poirier does, and it allows him to outbox him. Like, which I mean, and we'll get into, I suppose, that now with the post-fight interview. But like when McGregor's saying, I was boxing his head off or whatever, it's like, you really weren't. Like, you're delusional. Like, he's the better boxer. He's just the better grappler. He's just a better fighter. I think that's, just the way it is. I don't see how really McGregor really will struggle. I mean, no matter if they do a rematch, I don't see the need for it, but they probably will at some point. It's going to be tough for Conor.
Yeah, I think it's just as simple as he's been left behind.
Yeah.
This is a Dustin Poirier who since McGregor beat Alvarez has gone, well, now he's gone 8-1. McGregor in that time has gone, 1-3. 1 and 3.
Like that.
He's fought more than double the amount of times. He's been in the gym constantly. It's MMA. When McGregor fought Alvarez, which is his last good performance, the low kick was barely a thing, and now it's dominating the MMA.
Well, yeah, certainly the low kick.
Yeah, the low like kick, I should say. Yeah, but the MMA is such quickly evolving sport that you just have to be. I think with most things, I think most sportsmen in any sport, but seemingly especially MMA, if you just didn't do anything for 3 years and then try to come right back into the elite, you're going to struggle, because now with all this technology and coaching and everything that the modern athlete has, all these sports are just moving so fast, and it's just clear to me that he still thinks he can bring the sort of 2016 McGregor into 2021, and it's clearly been proven that is not the case, and for that reason, he's never going to beat Poirier again, I don't think, bar he can, but I think 19 times out of 20, 99 times out of 100, I think Poirier beats him. And I think probably for a large portion of that elite lightweight division, I think will not be scared, and will heavily fancy their chances against McGregor, because it's clear that he has just not kept with the times. And to an extent, who can blame him? He made hundreds of millions of pounds from his whiskey and that Mayweather fight, but you can't expect to come back into the elite of the division with all that time taken off. And then that's really where I am with McGregor. I don't, obviously he's got, probably a good 6 months to heal off of this broken leg. I mean, if Poirier gets offered that fourth fight, I hope he snatches it with both hands, because it's another easy payday.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what he wants to do. If he wants to, take it seriously, then I think he's probably got to start taking his camp seriously and probably get a new team together, because I'm not sure anyone in there is telling him what to do at any point. But I don't really see a future for McGregor in this elite lightweight division sort of ever, really. And that's a shame, but that's just how it is, I think.
Yeah. You mentioned I suppose what should Conor do going forward? Like, what's his moves here? And absolutely, I mean, he should have done it a few years ago, honestly, but he needs a new camp. He needs a whole new team around him, because I don't think this team has been good for him for years. And you see the post-fight comments, I think, by Kavanagh were he thought the first round was going well, and I'm like, what? You just got 10-8'd in the first round, and you're like, yeah, that was going all right. And it's a complete inability of anyone in his team to kind of be straight with him and tell him essentially what he needs to hear. And Kavanagh, I don't think, was ever necessarily that good a coach anyway. I think that he, Conor, was a very good student and a smart fighter kind of in his own right. So I think that Kavanagh, in a way, got lucky with him. And based on the fact that there aren't really any other elite fighters out of that gym, that seems to make a bit of sense. So yeah, certainly he needs to get a new team together, and just people that can kind of push him in the right direction if he does want to come back. But I don't know if you've seen that he since the fight, he was talking about how he had micro fractures or whatever leading into the fight, and or pre-existing fractures. And I don't know. I don't know if I believe that.
I mean, what fighter comes into any fight fully fit?
Yeah, but I think that, yeah, either that, or he was talking about more serious fractures. And if they were more serious, how did they not get picked up? And because I think there was a doctor for the UFC, or someone that has worked with the UFC, saying that fractures in legs are one of the things that they check for. They're the most things that bring up the most concern, essentially. So if they were there, they probably would have been detected, and they probably wouldn't have been going into the fight. So it probably wasn't. He probably wouldn't have been allowed to fight. Sorry. So I just essentially, I don't know if I believe that, and I honestly don't know if Conor believes that. I think it's an excuse that he's trying to. He feels like he needs to tell himself, because at this point, based on that and all the post-fight stuff, I honestly don't know if he can mentally recover from this loss, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing to his credit in his early years, we did see was his ability to take a loss well. That was always something he was branded at. When he lost to Nate in the first time, even to an extent when he lost to, well, absolutely when he lost to Dustin that first time, there was a humbleness and to an extent, but
I think there is a humbleness in the immediate aftermath, in the hours and days following. But I think quickly after that, I suppose that, but he's managed to kind of both times, apart from the Khabib fight, but the other two losses he's had, he's managed to kind of get his way and get an immediate rematch. So you kind of don't really get to see how he processes it, because he goes straight from having to you can't be sitting in a post-fight press conference having been choked out or knocked out saying talking all this being all this, you have to be a little bit humble. So, but because he got that immediate rematch, we never really got to see because he went straight into kind of like new fight mode. We never got to see how he kind of dealt with that over a longer kind of period of time. And I think that if you look at kind of how he's coped with in the lead or been in the lead up to this Poirier fight and since the fight, I don't think it's that well, clearly. So it's interesting in that regard. Like he always did, it's like against Nate and kind of against Poirier the first time in the immediate aftermath, he had to be, but I don't know how kind of like long lasting that ever could be.
Yeah, certainly it was a different, short term image this time with him sort of cowered in the corner with a broken leg, yelling, be careful what you're saying, and gun fingers. I mean, I don't even really want to talk about it too much. It's just like,
but
childish.
The one thing I would say in that is like talking about McGregor's aura earlier is like, if you're a 155-pound fighter now and you want a McGregor fight possibly coming up, like that would completely shatter the aura for me. Like just the image of like this honestly kind of sad, pathetic little man cowered in the corner with a broken leg, screaming about your wife's in my DMs or whatever, some ridiculous stuff. Like that would make me so confident going into a fight with McGregor. It's like who is this guy? He's just not there anymore.
Yeah.
And it'd make me so confident if I was a fighter facing him, basically.
Yeah, I think the aura was fading after that second fight, and I think it's all gone. As you say, I think anyone now that is looking at McGregor, if he does choose to come back, will be begging for that fight, because it's one that I think anyone in that top 10, top 15 has a very good chance of winning.
Oh yeah, like so many fighters like at this. Yeah, honestly, top 15. Like most people would have a good shot. Like Brad Riddell, like Drew Dober, maybe even, to be honest. It'd be interesting. Like depending on how he looked coming back, but I can't imagine he looks good from here on out, to be honest.
Yeah, we will see. I mean, I feel like we should obviously talk about Poirier, who did win the fight. We talked about what he did well, and staying composed, and all that work on the ground was great. He, you would assume, is sort of all but set to fight Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title. I mean, that is a cracking fight in and of itself, and I think we've seen with Charles that he's won the title, but I think you've got to fancy Poirier's chances in that fight. But it's a cracking fight nevertheless.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. It's obviously the fight to make. There can be no other fight. Essentially, like I think if you look at the men's pound for pound rankings by the UFC and like other rankings that people have put out, a lot of people put Dustin Poirier ahead of Charles Oliveira in like the lightweight rankings, essentially. So it's a no-brainer. So it will be. I think that it's a very interesting fight because we haven't, despite Dustin Poirier fighting, like having a fantastic resume and fighting all these fighters, he's never really beaten a like dedicated wrestler or good top player. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Oliveira can apply that. And then, but it's also interesting because I think that there are still, not necessarily questions about Oliveira's fragility. I think, or certainly not his mental fragility. He proved that in spades against Chandler. But kind of Poirier's power and technical boxing, I think, could give Oliveira some decent trouble, because Oliveira, despite making massive improvements, is still quite vulnerable defensively. So it'll be an interesting matchup, as both have things that really can threaten the other guy, basically.
Yeah, no, it certainly promises to be a cracking fight.
It will be a great fight.
And I'm sure we'll preview it more when it happens, perhaps towards the end of this year. All right, let's make our way down the card, because Mayweather spent about 25 minutes rambling on McGregor, but I think that's probably, necessary. Gilbert Burns, Stephen Thompson, co-main event. Really, not a barnstormer. Certainly not one for the ages. And a shame, because I thought this one could have been a really fun one. I mean, I don't know how you saw it, but for me, the story was Stephen Thompson, which I thought there was a real. I don't know whether regression is the right word, but it's we mentioned he hadn't been fighting against necessarily some of the elite in the welterweight division. He had to be sort of batting off the contenders from below. But this is the first time he probably mixed it with a top contender since probably Darren Till, and he just did not look at it. I mean, I wondered about Burns' ability to get into range, and we thought that could be a sticking point. But in the first and the third round, he was really able to get himself in and get the takedowns very comfortably.
Yeah, I think that obviously the fight has been like, Dana White in the aftermath was like, oh, it was a bad fight or whatever. And I think a lot of people, like, obviously it wasn't like the most fun or exciting fight, but I think it was still nonetheless, like, yes, Wonderboy did look slightly regressed. I think that his kind of cage craft wasn't what it kind of used to be. But I think even given that, it was still a very impressive performance by Burns generally. Like, just the ability to kind of like stick to a game plan and stick to the things that are working and kind of like just fight his way in against what is historically a very tough matchup for anyone, and certainly like a very tough matchup for anyone to look good against. Like, of all the people that have beat Wonderboy, like, no one's really ever looked good doing it. Pettis knocked him out, but it was a bit of a low percentage knockout. So like, and outside of that, no one's looked good against Wonderboy, really. Like, everyone that's beat him, it's been like a bit of a stinker. So like, it was kind of par for the course for a Wonderboy fight, really, or like a Wonderboy losing fight at least. So yeah, I thought it was still actually decently impressive by Burns. And like, he surprised me because I didn't think he was able to do it. Like, going into the fight, I was very kind of like down on his chances of doing it, to be honest. So he proved me wrong in that. But yeah, I did think that Wonderboy wasn't quite as sharp as he has been previously, and his cage craft I don't think was as good as it has been historically. But I think that had to be expected. He is 38 or something. So you have to think he's on kind of like the downward slope of his career at this point.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether he had that one more, well, the sort of two more wins in him to get himself up to the title picture. But yeah, I think credit to Burns. I think we saw a much more disciplined game plan based approach than what we saw against Usman, and maybe that's as a sort of consequence of the manner in which he lost that Usman fight, that this sort of more measured approach has come out. And as you say, I think you're definitely right to say that no one looks good against Thompson, even if they do win. So a good win for him. Yeah, I mean, for Wonderboy, a shame. I think that second round especially was disappointing. I think he only landed 9 strikes, and I was just hoping that we might see he's always not been necessarily a sort of high output fighter, especially unless someone sort of basically running into him, sort of Vicente Luque style. But it was a bit of a shame to see that, but a good win from Burns. And I think I'd always been not sure on Burns at the top of the welterweight division, because essentially he sort of got a win against a very aging Damian Maia, and then a Tyron Woodley that just about had enough credit in the bank to, you could still place your hat on his name in terms of a win. So
it was a win over Woodley at a point where his name still meant something, but I think you could clearly see he was essentially done. Like, after the Usman fight, Woodley had essentially nothing left. So it was fairly easy wins for anyone fighting him after that. So yeah, I think like, yeah, you're right with that. Burns was quite fortunate in his kind of like being like rocketed up the welterweight rankings. But yeah, carry on.
No, I think you've nailed it there. But this win against Thompson certainly says to me at least that he's a guy who deserves to be up there and mixing about. I mean, he mentioned Masvidal as someone he thought about in the post fight. I think he's right to think that he's going to need another win. I think an Edwards fight to me makes a lot of sense personally over a Masvidal. I think that serving as a sort of number one contender because I think it's probably likely going to be Covington. I think that for me makes the most sense, but a good win for him and for Thompson. I mean, I don't really know where he goes from here, but it maybe seems that that was his chance to maybe make a sort of last gasp run for another title shot, and it might be sort of too little, not too little, too late, just too late, really. But we will see. You never know. Okay, let's continue down. I mean, tied to Avasa Greg Hardy, perfect amount of time. That's just what needed. Ty giving it the sort of the wobbly legs, drawing in Hardy, and then a beautiful left hook counter, or not left hook counter, but sort of left hook as Hardy was running in.
This really was the ideal heavyweight fight. Just keep them like this, please, heavyweights, and we'll get on just fine.
Yeah, I think a fun stat coming out of this that I discovered was that Greg Hardy does not have a win in the UFC against someone who is currently in the UFC still. Brilliant. Everyone who he's beaten is now no longer in the UFC. So goodness knows what you do with him, but good win for Tuivasa, and he, I think he's a pretty fun character. It's good to see him make the most of this sort of second run he's got. Aldana Kunitskaya sort of ending in similar fashion. A good knockout win for Aldana. Something that you predicted head on. So that's good. And then
she really sorry. Aldana really does have like very solid boxing for like the women's 135 division, and her left hook especially that she dropped Kunitskaya with to kind of like start the finishing sequence is like a really good punch for her. Like just like kind of like she throws it as good as most people in the UFC, to be honest. Like there aren't many people that throw a better lead hook than Irene Aldana. So honestly, like very good to watch, although like she has kind of flaws in her game overall elsewhere, but just from a boxing perspective, I think she comes out the same gym as Brandon Moreno, and you can see that like they're doing a lot of good work over there. So yeah, very cool.
A good win for her, and probably seems like one of the next contenders for Amanda Nunes should she come down to back. Well, actually, I think her next fight's a bantamweight, but we'll see. Sean O'Malley, Chris Moutinho. I don't really know where to start with this one. I hadn't watched the fight, and I'd seen before I'd watched it that this had got fight of the night, and I was like, oh, well, interesting. Moutinho must have really put up some fight. No, I mean he was absolutely battered from pillar to post. I mean, it's he really needed the Edmund Tarverdian screaming out head movement from the corner because. Oh, yeah. Crikey. I mean, it was just like it was not particularly comfortable to watch. I sort of the sort of yearning for more. I think fine, you can have a conversation about the stoppage and if you're going to put him through 14 and a half minutes of that, you may as well give him the full 15. But also, I'm perfectly fine not seeing Moutinho's head get rattled around for another 30 seconds.
It could have definitely been stopped like a lot earlier, like second round, honestly, start of the third. But yeah, whatever. Like it is what it is. Like they found Sean O'Malley. We've said they found him essentially a punching bag. I felt like they essentially found him a punching bag to come out here someone who is as tough as a punching bag, it seems as well. Like, give Chris Moutinho like his dues on that. He was dog tough, but like didn't have any sort of defense to speak of. Like, was just getting hit for free. And despite how dominant that kind of performance was from Sean O'Malley, he still managed to come away from it, I think, not looking very good, which kind of continues my kind of Sean O'Malley isn't as good as at least he thinks he is kind of narrative. But like, Moutinho was able to pressure him far too easily for my liking, was able to leg kick him far too easily for my liking. And then O'Malley was also looking up at the clock, like in the end, like the end of the first. Like, you should not be tied at that point, as it like, especially as O'Malley was fully really dictating the pace. Like, you need to be able to fight your fight at your pace for 15 minutes, like no questions asked. You need to be able to do that, and I think O'Malley kind of struggles. And at the end of the fight, also, have you seen like the list of injuries that O'Malley has, like at the end of this fight?
No,
it's something like a fractured tibia, like broken hands, broken wrists, or something. Like, he's completely destroyed his body just like punching at this guy, and it's like the man is made of glass. I just
yeah, I mean the leg kicks from Moutinho, the sort of rare ones that he was able to land, I think it's quite clear that those having effect, and yeah, I think anyone in this featherweight division who can get bantamweight rather, sorry, that can chop down O'Malley's legs is going to be giving themselves a very good chance of victory. I think also conversely, O'Malley's lack of leg kicks, I've got it up now, 3% thrown to the legs, and yeah, fine, keep throwing to the head if you're having success there, which he evidently was. But I think in the other fights, and he has had a higher propensity to throw to the legs in some of his other fights, but given the ease with which even Moutinho could at times get him to the back of the cage and close him down, I think that's something he's got to be using more. He's obviously got fantastic leg kicks, but let's aim them at the legs, because if he shuts down his opponent's movement, that I think would go a long way to easing any sort of defensive fragilities that he has, and the ability of an opponent to sort of get at his legs or close him down effectively.
Yeah, I think that like it really was this fight, despite how like he set a record like just on this poor guy's face, basically. Despite that, I think that it really, for me, kind of just made me think how far off the elite O'Malley is at this point. Like, just think about the brief or fleeting success that Moutinho had. Like, think about what Petr Yan would do to Sean O'Malley. Like, how easily he would back him up and just tear him apart. But like, you can go a lot lower down the rankings to like think of guys that would destroy O'Malley in a similar way. Like, Pedro Munoz would absolutely batter him, I think, like would rip him apart. Like, even he's not even in the UFC anymore, but John Lineker would be a terrible fight for O'Malley. Like, he'd get his body absolutely ripped to pieces. So like, I just think that O'Malley has got a lot to do at this point. And I don't know, like, yeah, I don't know how much we've seen him grow and develop really since he's been in the UFC. So yeah. I don't know where it's necessarily going to come from. I think that he's started to take a little bit off his punches so that he's not just banking on a knockout and can he fades a little bit, but he can go the 15 minutes generally now, whereas before he was really struggling. He has taken a little bit off his punches, so he's kind of like, he's getting experience, but I don't think we've seen the growth from him that we kind of needed to. So it remains to be seen if he can still do that. But right now, he'd be destroyed by most of the top 10, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think his probably best win is maybe Thomas Almeida.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's clearly much bigger tests to come, and he was calling for Rob Font in the post fight, which I think he gets head absolutely jabbed off. So yeah, I think there's work to be done, and certainly needs to prove himself against people other than Chris Moutinho. But as you said, fair play to him, because he absorbed a hell of a lot of punches and probably has guaranteed himself a second fight in the UFC, which
definitely
is certainly what he would have gone into that fight wanting to do, probably knowing that he wasn't going to win. I mean, that's the main card wrapped up. If we look at the prelims, anything stick out to you that you wanted to mention?
We did talk about Ilia Topuria, Ryan Hall in the build-up, and this turn, Ben is very annoyingly shaking his head right now. But no, I did say going in, we kind of like had a little bet on this, or kind of a pride bet going in on this, and I was backing Topuria all the way. I thought he'd completely shut down Hall and probably finish him, and it turned out I was right. Hall really did not do anything in this fight, but flopped to his back about 17 times in 4 minutes. It was absolutely absurd. Like, he looked like he's got worse. So
I talk about the wonder boys regression. Jesus, I mean, it was like someone on a game where all the other buttons are broken and that's the only thing he could do. It's like, Elkins. Okay, it's Darren Elkins, but at least in that fight he threw some kicks. Threw some punches. Like, you've got hands for a reason. You've got legs for a reason, fella. Like, there was, fine. Do a few of those Imanari rolls. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yeah. Do a few of them early on. Just see if you can grab on BJ Penn style. Well, I say like we did against BJ Penn, but there has got to be some setup, or at least some attempt to try and do something else. Because after about the sixth one, I think it was quite clear that without any damage or tiring him out, Ilia Topuria is just a bit of a machine. I mean, it was just after about 2.5 minutes. Look, goodness me, I not want to talk about this on Thursday.
There are a few funny things I thought of when watching this fight, and it was just like all the talk for like the past 2 or 3 years of like how Ryan Hall's been like, oh, everyone in the division's scared to face me, and it's just like on the 15th time he flopped to his back, and it's like, this is the man the featherweight division is scared to face. It's like, come on. And then it was also Joe Rogan saying, like, for all the mouth breathers in the audience not understanding this, Ryan Hall is a genius about 15 seconds before he's completely unconscious. I thought that was hilarious. So yeah, it was a funny fight, at least, and I enjoyed it from that perspective.
And you know what? Fair play to Ilia Topuria, because he just wasn't having any of it. He was like, I'm just gonna stand at distance, go in, hit my shots, and then get out. And then when his opportunity came, the image of Ryan Hall still thinking he had a chance of a submission as Topuria is raining down blows sort of on his unprotected skull is just a vision of just insanity. Like, literally getting clonked in the head by Topuria, who hits like an absolute truck, and Ryan Hall's like, oh, I've still got your leg. It's like, no, you haven't, son, because you got about 2 shots left and you're unconscious. I mean, I don't really know where Ryan Hall goes from here, but great win for Topuria.
He goes back to 1994 and fights in the UFC then, where he's probably a bit more suited.
Yeah, I mean, good win for Topuria. And you talk about someone who a lot of people in the ranked featherweight division will not want to be fighting. That is a guy that you get nothing off beating Topuria. Maybe you get a bit more now.
I think you will get a bit more now. I think he's a fairly highly touted prospect at this point. Like, it depends on the guy, like where they're ranked. But if he fights another prospect, I think that'll do big things for them. But anyone ranked currently, I think, will want to stay away from Topuria.
Yeah, he is a banana skin if ever I've seen one. And what a sort of he's, and in fact apparently he's now ranked number 15 as of 3 days ago. So he's made his way in there, and he is a tough fight for anyone. I mean, that aside, what else do you have on the prelims? Max Griffin looked really good against Carlos Condit. I thought that was a good performance from him. Nico Price sort of failed to drag Mikel Pereira back into sort of meme lord status. that
He
was a
tried,
sort of
Pereira
yeah,
did.
he
Did his little
tried.
backflip.
He
Got a
did
head stomp.
yeah, which I don't know about the legality of that, but
I mean, it was completely illegal. Like the referee warned him, like no stomping. It's like no ref, take the position away. Like he did a backflip, stomped on his head. Nico Price was like completely dazed, like what's going on? And then Pereira managed to mount him. Like in that, like you definitely take the position away from Pereira in that and stand him back up. It was not great reffing, but I think that he was just probably amazed that it happened, that he just wasn't thinking about it. Honestly, he was like, "What about you? Like, what is this?" So no, interesting. He is certainly the meme lord.
and Dricus Duplessis, who I did point out was going to be fun. Dricus Duplessis just looks like very average on the feet until he absolutely sparks you out. I mean, it was a slightly weird fight, but coming off the cage with a pretty tasty 1-2, and Trevin Giles just went out straight away. Good knockout for him, and he's going to be an interesting one to chart because I'm still not really sure where he's at. Elsewhere, good win for Jennifer Meyer. Can't say I watched too much of the fight. Good win for Brad Tavares, and I can't say I caught the first one, but just some good fights in there, some interesting talking points, and Ryan Hall just spamming that role will forever live long in my memory. After I said this might be his big coming out party, but possibly. Other than the time I picked Jessica Andrade to oh god, who did I pick her to lose to?
Caitlin Chukagian.
That's the one. Her lose me picking Andrade to beat. To lose to Caitlin Chukagian is probably my second worst pick. But certainly in retrospect, me saying Ryan Hall was going to have a coming out party against Ilia Topuria is not my finest.
Did not work out.
Not my finest. But we move on swiftly. That basically covers it for 264. I mean, we can briefly look at next week's card. I should also say that there might not be a podcast the week after because I'm away, but we might briefly offer some thoughts on Sandhagen Dillashaw, but we'll focus on this week. I guess we may as well look at the main event first. Islam Makhachev, Thiago Moises. I mean, I don't really know what to make of this. I thought the Drew Dober one was the sort of last of Makhachev batting off the sort of people around him, and he was going to look upwards. But he's now got Moises, who is still ranked below him, and I still don't really know what to think of Makhachev because there obviously will be the Khabib comparisons, and I'm not quite sure he is Khabib in waiting, but he's still an impressive fighter, and I'm not quite sure what this Moises matchup does for him, really.
Yeah, I really don't think it is a very weird bit of matchmaking, to be honest. Like, he's fighting, like, sideways, essentially, at best, really. And you just feel like his career isn't really progressing, which is a bit disappointing. Because, like, honestly, like, really, he hasn't fought up the rankings like in so long. Like I can't remember the last time, honestly.
Wow, that RDA fight, maybe? that RDA fight that they had.
Yeah, it was booked,
confirmed. I think once or twice, and it was pulled. That was opportunity, and maybe that's something they'll look to turn to after this fight. But he really has struggled to get that sort of star making matchup that he can look good at, and also have it be against someone that has a lot of credit in the bank.
Yeah, and then you mentioned obviously the Khabib comparison, and that's always going to be there. Like two Russian guys, they're pretty much best friends. Like Khabib now is seeming to be one of his main coaches, which I think is honestly one of the big reasons why it's been so easy really for Khabib to kind of retire, is that he's had like he's seemed so dedicated to getting Makhachev kind of like up the rankings and to his title shot, essentially like giving him his turn, that I think that's one of the motivations or reasons he managed to have a firm MMA retirement, unlike most other people, or so it seems so far. But also, if you look at Khabib's kind of like he's kind of packed on the pounds since, it'd be probably, he seems like he's enjoying his retirement, so I don't see him breaking it. But no, the Khabib comparison is always going to be there. And they are similar in ways, obviously, but they're also very different in ways. Makhachev is much more of a kind of like control and much kind of like tighter grappler on top. Whereas Khabib is very much kind of like tripod kind of smash and then pass. Makhachev keeps it very tight, a lot of heavy pressure, and like will look for kind of more kind of like tighter passes like that, and also is far less potent with his ground and pound because of that, because he doesn't posture up like Khabib does. But he's also a bit smoother on the feet, I'd say. So so from that perspective, he's interesting, but I also think he does lack the kind of athletic talents of Khabib, really. Like, he's not got the kind of freakish strength and speed that Khabib had. So he's a very good fighter, and I'll be interested in him. I want to see him fight top 10, top 5, but I'm not sure. As you said, I'm not sure he's Khabib in waiting.
Yeah, I think certainly what I saw in that Drew Dober fight, as you say, was a guy who was less sort of probably able to work his way sort of quickly into the dominant positions that Khabib was able to. His ability to pass guard, I think, especially in that Gaethje fight, his last fight was just awesome to see. And I think there's still a way to go for Makhachev, and I think he can obviously improve, but I don't think I've seen enough to suggest that he's, as you say, the heir apparent to that throne. I mean, Thiago Moises as well, I guess it is worth mentioning. They are pretty similar, I imagine, in the rankings. Actually, although Makhachev is 9, so I thought he might be a bit further down. Moises is 40 in the rankings and has got 3 wins recently. Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, and Alexander Hernandez. I don't know to what extent I've seen anything in those performances that makes me think that he's a guy that's going to work his way up the lightweight division to any great extent. But it's a good opportunity for him, and I think he will present some problems. I think he is quite long, quite a big guy at the weight, but I think Makhachev's pedigree and what he's shown so far against sort of people of sort of Moises' standings in the division leads me to think that it should be enough that the Makhachev will get the job done.
Yeah, I think that Moises is a decent grappler, so I think it could give Makhachev a bit of pause in that regard, as because we have seen when Makhachev fought Davi Hamos, he was a bit reluctant, at least initially or early on in the fight, to grapple with him. So you might see kind of the early rounds look a bit kind of Makhachev slowly pressuring him, kind of threatening with the wrestling, but not necessarily fully relying on that, probably kind of jabbing him up from range a little bit. I think he'll rely a bit more on his stand-up early on, at least. So I don't think it'll be the heavy grinding pressure performance, say, that he had against Drew Dober. But it'll be interesting. We'll see.
Yeah, we shall certainly see. Elsewhere on that card, I mean, co-maining, you've got the return of Miesha Tate. How many wins before she's thrown in against Amanda Nunes for a sort of rematch? Who knows? I don't really have any sort of thoughts on that, but we'll see how she looks in her first fight back in
nearly 5 years. Yeah, and she's been had children, been president of one, or not president, but whatever position she had at one. It was very strange to see her coming back. I thought she was done for sure. But yeah, very strange.
Yeah, definitely. And then sort of closing off, I guess the main card. Stevens Gamrot looks promising. Rodolfo Vieira comes back after his very sort of memey loss against Anthony Hernandez, getting submitted despite all of his pedigree. Hopefully he's can last more than 3 minutes this time. Those two certainly seem like the only other two of real intrigue from my point of view. Although Gabriel Benitez, Billy Quarantillo will be quite fun.
Yeah, I think as you said, Stevens Gamrot, I think that would be a good test for Gamrot. See what he's able to do. Like, he's looked pretty good in his kind of like UFC run so far. Like, he did lose his first fight, but I think he bounced back and he got a win since then. So yeah, Jeremy Stevens is a good test to see if a fighter's an elite fighter, really. So yeah, hopefully I'd quite like Gamrot to pass it. So yeah, that'd be good. And then yeah, Benitez Quarantillo, I think could be a sneaky fight of the night, to be honest. That has potential to be a very fun fight. Quarantillo is a very kind of like come forward, kind of kind of reckless, messy fighter. Benitez is quite fun combination puncher. So I think that one would be quite fun, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I think it does promise to be quite good. I mean, do you want to offer any sort of quick thoughts on Sandhagen Dillashaw for a couple of weeks' time? I mean, I haven't really thought about it too much, but before we close out, I mean, key question is going to be, so what sort of state Dillashaw is in, sort of coming back after was it EPO his ban was for?
Yeah, EPO.
So I think those are sort of the key questions, but we've seen from Sandhagen in his last few fights that he's a very intelligent fighter and sort of very, very skilled in wherever the fight goes, unless it's an Aljamain Sterling choke. But what are your sort of early thoughts on this? I think it'll be more of an interesting one to look at sort of retrospectively.
So, yeah, certainly in that regard, because the main question is that Dillashaw's been off for 2.5 years. In his last fight, he looked like a walking corpse, and he was now he's 2.5 years older, not on any performance enhancing drugs. So yeah, the main question is really, what is TJ Dillashaw looking like? But even if he's looking very good, it's still a very tough test because Corey Sandhagen is a very good fighter. I really like him. And it'll be interesting to see how he deals with like the length of Sandhagen, as well as kind of like the clever combination punching of Sandhagen, because Dillashaw, very offensively potent, but never particularly sound defensively. So it'll be interesting to see if Sandhagen kind of like unlock his defense and start kind of going to town on him. So yeah, no, I think it should be. And Dillashaw's always been a fun action fighter. So yeah, I think it should be a really fun fight if Dillashaw's looking anything like himself. So no, I'm really looking forward to it's the best fight for the next few weeks, honestly. So
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, no, it should be a good one.
Yeah, I think as you said, I think I haven't really got too much to add on what you said, but it is going to be one that is largely dependent on how quickly TJ Dillashaw can get back up to speed and also what up to speed looks like for TJ Dillashaw now, as you say, with all that time out and perhaps not having those drugs circulating in his veins. But we will hopefully cover that in a couple of weeks' time. But that is all we've got time for today. So until then, have a good few weeks, everyone, and we'll see you then.
See ya.